Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Reporters. I'm Thomas Waterhouse. In recent weeks, walls and buildings across France have been plastered with slogans highlighting the mistreatment of women across the country. Each year, some 220,000 women are victims of physical and sexual violence or moral harassment committed by their current or former partner. On the back of the global Me Too movement, more and more women are coming out to say that enough is enough. Our team has spent the past year following some of those calling for change, and this is their report.
February 2020. On the rooftops of Paris, a commando-style operation is starting. Tonight is the César Award ceremony, the French version of the Oscars. This operation is a protest against the award nominations for director Roman Polanski, accused by multiple women of rape and sexual assault. But it's soon interrupted.
Légalement, viens chercher une banderole, madame. Voilà, que vous apprêtiez à exhiber.
En fait.
Voilà.
Avec quelle autorisation?
Est-ce que on vous demande de nous la présenter, s'il vous plaît?
C'est quoi, pardon?
C'est un trouble à l'ordre public, c'est un délit.
Nous, on aimerait voir la banderole, s'il vous plaît.
What happened exactly?
En fait, quand on était sur...
When we were on the rooftop, lots of people were watching us. There was an old guy, a total idiot, who was watching us while he was on the phone. Whenever we looked at him, he hid himself, but then he came back. He's the one who must have called the building's janitor and given us up to the police. What shocks me is that I'm sure that guy, if through the window he saw a woman being beaten to death by her husband, he would never make the call.
Of a woman being beaten, that doesn't affect his own comfortable situation. But when you put banners on his building, you tarnish his building. And that's what he doesn't accept. It's about his own comfort. I'm not surprised that someone from the building outed us.
Rape, injuries, and gender-related killings. Violence against women is everywhere and often starts in the intimacy of the home.
If he wants it and she does not and he forces her, that's rape, full stop, married or not married.
Every year in France, 220,000 women are subjected to violence by their partner or ex-partner. More than 150 are killed. Behind the numbers, lives and families smashed into pieces. The murder of a woman is known as femicide.
As long as we still get nothing out of the people in government, we'll keep tarnishing your walls.
Women and men are working alongside the survivors to make change happen. Isabelle is a lawyer. Fabienne is a senior police officer. Louise is a doctor. Julie is an activist. Each in their own fields of expertise, they're fighting so that violence towards women is no longer inevitable. We followed them for almost a year. Here are the stories of how they protect the living and honor the dead. Isabelle Steyer has been defending women and children who were victims of violence ever since she qualified 27 years ago. She's the only lawyer to have successfully brought a claim against the French state in a case of femicide. Isabelle Thomas was murdered with her parents in 2014.
She just left her partner. He didn't accept their separation. This is often the case with femicides. It's the moment when they take action. He tried to strangle her. She made a complaint at the village police station, and he was put under a court order forbidding him from meeting her or going to the same places as her.
Despite the restraining order, Isabelle's ex-partner Patrick Lemoine continued following her and sending her hundreds of messages. Isabelle made several complaints to the police, stating that he was violating the restraining order. Her ex-partner was not held in custody or even summoned by the police. There was one final complaint in July 2014. In August, armed with a revolver, he followed her car. With multiple shots and in broad daylight, he killed Isabelle and her parents. He fled to Belgium but was arrested and committed suicide while in detention. A trial could not take place. But Isabelle Steyer helped the victim's family bring a claim for serious failings against the French state. In March 2020, the court ruled in the family's favor.
In many femicide cases, it's clear that the state has failed. In around 40% of femicides, the women had already alerted the police, a social worker, or a doctor. How many complaints are needed to prevent a murder? In the Thomas case, 5 complaints were made. The issue isn't getting women to speak. Isabelle Thomas called the emergency services even while she was being followed. The call was recorded, and the gunshots could be heard all over the town, and by the operator who received the call. They were 500 meters from the police station. Why wasn't a police car sent? Because the phone operator who took the call didn't believe her.
The statements made by victims are constantly called into question. According to the General Inspectorate of the Justice System, 80% of complaints made to police about domestic violence are shelved. The first step, making it through the doors of the police station, is the main obstacle for many women. Refusal to accept their complaints, minimalizing the violence inflicted on them, making them feel guilty. To stop this kind of malpractice, Fabienne decided to act. 10 years ago, she started a training program for her fellow officers.
We know there can be failures in terms of the reception and treatment of certain complaints. Today, the police force is examining its own conscience. We've put in place training programs in order to avoid all those things that were said and that perhaps took place. I'm not saying they didn't happen, but we're doing all we can to make sure they don't happen again. I don't know what image you have of a police officer. Sometimes there's an image of a police officer who doesn't ever let up, who does this or who doesn't do that, and who speaks to victims in a very detached manner to protect themselves in some way. But we can also show empathy. From the first person a woman sees when she enters a police station, trust needs to be established. Reception desks are maybe not particularly private places, so it's your job to make women feel like they're in a confidential environment. Be careful. It's up to you to open the discussion, to listen. You should never be on your mobile phone, or if you hear your colleague sharing a joke, don't start laughing with them without paying attention to the person talking to you. This is a serious job. During these training sessions, I try to be as thorough as possible, so my colleagues really understand what a woman who's a victim of domestic violence is going through. The fact that she's trapped in a circle of violence, that she's under someone's control. You need to have this in your head each time you're faced with a victim of domestic violence. Have you ever heard about a woman who's made a complaint, but then decided to drop it? It's there. The explanation is there. It's all there. The tension. Things are going badly or starting to go badly. We'll take the example of physical violence. It's the most telling. The crisis. He hits her, it makes a noise, and the neighbors or the woman herself calls the police. She may or may not be taken to the hospital, the complaint is made, it's over. She wants out. I'm caricaturing, but more or less that's what it's like. And then he comes back to her. It's true, I hit you. It's true. But did you see what you made for dinner? Frankly, it was disgusting. I've worked all day, and in the evening I come home, and that's what I find. Put yourself in my shoes. That's right. He's justifying himself by making her feel guilty. I promise it won't happen again. I'll take you to a restaurant. I'll take you on holiday. She drops the complaint.
Police officers are among the rare professionals who go inside homes, and so they're often the first to be confronted by violence that's usually kept out of sight. Other professionals are in direct contact with victims, seeking help. North of Paris, the Maison des Femmes, women's home in English, provides a treatment program unique in France. Opened in 2016, this facility offers victims of violence both medical and psychological care, and the chance to make friendships. Louise is an intern in gynecology obstetrics and a doctor at a hospital in the city of Rennes. A 6-month internship at the Maison des Femmes was a natural choice for her.
Toi, j'imagine que c'est tout t'intéresse, y compris la chirurgie et tout ça.
Oui, bien sûr.
D'accord. Donc toi, tu viendras préférentiellement au bloc. Après, moi, j'aimerais bien ouvrir une petite vacation.
Here, some 20 professionals, psychologists, midwives, sexologists, work to offer a complete treatment program for women who have escaped a cycle of violence.
As soon as she was sitting down, she looked at me and said, "I want you to help me escape."
Every morning I take part in staff meetings with other professionals at the Maison des Femmes. It's a time for us to discuss complicated or difficult situations, to advise and share our experiences with other professionals.
She wanted us to get her out of that accommodation, her and her children, and put them somewhere else. She said to me, "Unless you offer me something decent, I would rather be subjected to the violence than be in an unstable situation." After that, I said to myself, she can't be left like that, so I gave her an appointment the very next day with Mathilde. But the lady said to us, "I'll never be able to leave the house." Should we try via the school to send her a note telling her that she can come back?
You called me on Monday asking for an appointment for her on Tuesday. That meant all the warning signs were there.
Oh yes, attempted strangling. He even showed her the kitchen knives saying he would kill her, rape almost every day, death threats. All the warning signs were there. It was the first time she had talked. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. A woman recounts 13 years of violence for the first time in 30 minutes just like that, and then she disappears.
Never a working day goes by when these professionals are not confronted with stories of violence. And yet, every day, they find the strength to face the brutality and help its victims.
When we think of the violence, we first think of the physical act of hitting. But it's a lot wider than that. There's sexual violence, rape within marriage, violence when it comes to money, psychological violence, and even female circumcision. We see women who are victims of female genital mutilation. Sometimes they need medical certificates in order to request asylum, and sometimes they need surgical reconstruction.
Pourquoi vous avez quitté le Mali, c'était à cause de ces violences-là? Oui. Ouais, d'accord. Vous vous souvenez à quel âge vous avez été excisée?
À l'âge de 7 ans.
Donc si ça vous va, on va regarder ensemble au niveau de l'excision. D'accord? Je vais vous laisser enlever le pantalon, la culotte et on va s'installer juste ici. Est-ce que je peux toucher? Est-ce que vous voulez voir avec un miroir, avec moi?
Oui.
Alors, vous allez pouvoir tenir vous-même le miroir. C'est bon, vous voyez? Oui. Donc, je vous montre. Là, il y a les grandes lèvres. Oui. D'accord. Et quand j'écarte, ici, on voit la cicatrice de l'excision. Oui. Donc, vous, l'exciseuse, elle a pris ça et elle a coupé le capuchon, les petites lèvres et le petit bout du clitoris. Mais on voit bien que le clitoris, il est beaucoup plus grand que le petit bout qu'elle a coupé. Vous pouvez aussi, cette crème-là, la mettre pendant les rapports sexuels. Vous la mettez sur votre sexe à vous, sur le sexe du monsieur, et ça va éviter les frottements. Donc ça va diminuer les douleurs. Déjà, quand il n'y a plus de douleur, on peut peut-être plus ressentir de choses. D'accord? Et puis, essayez-vous. Vous vous posez tranquillement, vous prenez le temps, parfois ça peut durer 15-20 minutes, mais vous essayez de toucher à cet endroit-là pour voir s'il y a du plaisir ou pas. D'accord? Et si les douleurs persistent, si le plaisir ne vient pas et que vous voulez voilà, travailler un peu dessus, vous pouvez venir nous revoir. D'accord? Je vous prescris en tout cas la crème. Parfois, les femmes demandent une reconstruction.
Sometimes women ask for reconstruction, not for their own sexual activity or for the pain, but for reasons of identity. They need to get back something that was taken away from them. They need to do something for themselves and to go through with it to prove to themselves they're capable. To get back possession of their bodies, that's a perfectly valid reason for reconstructive surgery.
C'est très humiliant de se sentir incomplète quand on passe à côté des autres femmes. Indication clairement identitaire. Oui. 6,5.
Every week, I accompany Dr. Hada Atem so that I can learn how to carry out clitoral reconstructive surgery.
Dr. Hada Atem, a gynaecologist obstetrician, founded the Maison des Femmes.
Est-ce qu'on pourrait avoir des compresses, s'il te plaît?
A pioneer in her field, Dr. Atem's work in caring for victims of violence has inspired others.
In the operating theater, it's about support, apprenticeship, and mentoring. I help Dr. Atem, and bit by bit, she teaches me. And step by step, she hands me the reins, so that in the future, I can do this on my own. I'm planning to open a similar facility at the hospital in Rennes.
In recent years, charities, healthcare professionals, and also police officers have understood they need to work together to be effective.
When we intervene, we're not doctors, we're not psychologists, we can't do those jobs. Doctors are not police officers, they can't carry out investigations. If we don't know what the others are doing, we go nowhere.
In 2020, in several administrative departments in France, the police, the courts, and hospitals signed agreements to allow victims to make complaints while they're in hospital. They no longer need to push open the doors of the police station, face the stares of onlookers, and be forced to recount their story again and again. Side by side the professionals, activists are bringing the fight against gender-based violence to the street.
Allez, encore 3 lettres.
I'm what's called a sticker within the movement Collage Féminicide Paris, which is denouncing gender-based violence on your walls. The idea is to show people that it's happening next door to where they live. It's not just on the internet or on TV. It's not just the state's business, it's everyone's business.
Hein, Chloé? Qui c'est qui donne le top départ, là?
Je sais pas du tout.
Julie got involved in the wake of the Me Too movement. On the eve of International Women's Day, for the first time she's protesting at night, surrounded by friends.
Oh là là, mais elle est trop belle! Moi, je préfère celle-là quand même. Hein. Elle est plus jolie, celle-là.
C'est lui qui a choisi ce qu'il voulait mettre. Boulot, machin.
We're here at night in the street with all these other women to say to everyone who bothered us in the street, here we are, you don't have a choice in the matter. Now we'll make you listen. I don't know that we've managed to reclaim public places, not yet. But I go past these collages and they reassure me. They give an enormous amount of strength to huge numbers of women.
last year, the violence against women that existed only as numbers or back-page news stories is now on walls across France. But the fates of some women never even make it into official statistics.
Julie
was found dead. Her body was covered with bruises. Her face was disfigured because of how many times it was slammed into something hard. She was found 48 hours later in that state, in a pool of her own blood, in a room that had been turned upside down by her 17-year-old daughter. Everyone, the paramedics, the health staff, and forensic doctors, all considered that another person had been involved.
As in the great majority of femicide cases, Julie had received death threats. She confided in friends and made several complaints to the police. All of these elements made up a police file of 3,000 pages, front to back. Julie's sister, Lucie, suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, spent a year preparing a civil case. The investigating judge had decided to shelve the case.
Julie was killed. Her daughter found her dead in a pool of her own blood on June 25, 2019. She'd received death threats from her boyfriend until 11 p.m. before she died. Despite that, the investigating judge decided to close the case, concluding that a fit of madness had taken place. Julie, we love you. Until you get justice, we'll be angry on your behalf. I really feel that my sister is sending me a signal. She's telling me, Lucie, you must continue, because no one has come to take down this memorial of her. I said to myself that if it was taken down, that would tire me in the fight, because I'm beginning to get a bit exhausted. Even though we've only been doing this for a year, and it will go on for several years. To see it finished, that will motivate me to continue fighting. The fact that people have not taken it down means that perhaps they were moved by it, and we must continue to find the truth.
A very high number of femicides are considered as suicides, as acts of violence women carried out on their own bodies, as domestic accidents, as mishaps, or as unresolved cases. Here we have a woman who is dead. Those responsible are perhaps free and so capable of committing more acts like that. So women are in danger. But the investigation was closed after a year. A year? I ask myself, is that a reasonable time period to investigate the death of a woman and then say, it's not worth it? That's the question. After a year, is it not worth it?
When we opened the file, we said that it absolutely couldn't have been a fit of madness. She had bruises everywhere. Her body was badly injured. She'd lost 3 teeth. To inflict such violence on herself that she swallowed a tooth that was found in her throat, and the 2 other teeth were found outside her body, it's completely unthinkable. It's impossible.
This case should have led to more investigations. But no one was put in custody. No assisted witnesses were identified. There's nothing. We have nothing. That's what worries me. What is the true extent of femicides?
Gender-based violence never lets up. More worrying still, during a crisis, be it economic, political, or health-related, women's rights go backwards.
Alerte coronavirus. Pour vous protéger et protéger les autres, restez chez vous.
Pendant la période du confinement,
During the lockdown, we saw a deterioration in women's rights and an exponential increase in violence against women and children. When couples were confined to their homes, it was a challenge to find a way to go to the police station. And when only 1 in 10 were open, and when medical judicial processes had slowed down, doctors weren't able to record evidence of gender-based violence because they were busy dealing with the COVID crisis. In these circumstances, how can an official complaint be made, which is worth the paper it's written on? And when we wanted to request protection measures, no judges were available. When I dialed 119, the emergency number for children in danger, the number was constantly busy, even at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I decided to start my own charity. It's called Les Échappées Belles, Narrow Escapes. My mobile phone is always available and I reply to messages from 8 a.m. to midnight on a voluntary basis. He's asking if I want him to hit me again. He's shouting at me. This is very serious. I'm going to write, be careful. The tension needs to be lowered. Because here there's a risk of homicide. If you fall victim to violence, can you escape? Tell me. What's happened to me is that women who've been in this situation, I've told them to get out, and then I have no news because they were murdered. What's for sure is that if her husband sees her on her phone for too long, he'll get suspicious. I'll tell her to erase the messages. I can see she's read them, but she's not replying. That worries me. I've had a huge number of calls, cases that were crazier than you can imagine. I've had children call me for the first time in my life. A 10-year-old who searched the internet for the name of a lawyer.
While the amount of official complaints made to police went down during lockdown, the number of alerts relating to gender-based violence increased dramatically. Fabienne volunteered to strengthen the national alert system of sexual harassment and gender-based violence.
T'as 2 minutes? Ouais, vas-y. Je vais te parler de ton chat de cette nuit, tu sais, l'histoire du viol. Là.
Ouais, il fait plus que ramer là, parce qu'elle voulait rien dire. À un moment, t'as vu, elle me dit même laissez-moi, alors que c'est elle qui est venue se connecter quoi. Mais j'ai pas eu l'identité quoi, c'est dommage. Ouais, mais ça a été super long quoi. Heureusement qu'elle avait le temps, et moi aussi.
T'as trouvé les mots, donc c'est
tant mieux. Tant mieux, écoute. Cette plateforme est un des nombreux outils qui est mis à
This is one of several tools available to victims so they can avoid going to the police station, where they fear they won't be heard or understood. The victim can connect to the chat room and tell her story. An alert will be made and sent to the relevant police station, and the victim will be called by the police and given an appointment. She will not have to tell her stories several times. The difference with other platforms like this one is that there are only police officers. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Good evening. I'm from the Department of Alerts for Sexual Harassment and Gender-Based Violence. I'm calling because I have an internet user who has alerted me to a father who's made death threats to a mother and 3 children, 16, 14 and 11 years, and they're all in the house. He's slamming doors, hitting furniture and threatening to send them all to the graveyard. It's happening at... Thank you very much.
Priority is always given to emergencies. That means if a victim can't call 17, the French emergency number, because she can't speak, we can bring in local forces in emergencies. Right now, I'm dealing with a case of a man or a woman, I don't know which, who's worried about their female friend who's separated from her partner. They have 2 children, and he's threatening to attack her with acid and disfigure her. So I suggested that he launch an alert so that his friend, with him as an intermediary, should make an official complaint and protection measures could be put in place. Even if the official complaint isn't made, with a simple statement or if officers intervene at the home, a judge can take on the case. We call it an opportunity for follow-up, which means that the judge can take on the case and open a procedure, even if the victim did not make an official complaint to the police. We have to be very careful with what we say during these chats because you don't always know who's on the other side. The meaning of words is not always clear if you can't see someone's face. We have to gain the victim's trust.
The events you're describing to me are serious. They are punishable by law. If you feel ready to make a complaint, I can give you guidance and assistance.
This is a normal reaction for a victim of rape.
You can confide in us without fear. We're not here to judge you. We're here to help you.
You have nothing to be ashamed of. He took advantage of your trust.
That was the most intense night so far. But at least we were useful, I hope. A lot of people contacted us, which means a lot of people are in distress. I can't bear to imagine how many are confined at home and don't dare contact us or other emergency services. That upsets me, that victims don't know the ways they can contact us and get help.
Get help, but also rebuild their lives. In Saint-Denis, the staff at the Maison des Femmes do not only offer medical treatment. Here, women learn to find confidence in themselves.
During the 6 months of my internship, I took part in medical appointments. I was in the operating theater. But what sets this service apart are the workshops the women can take part in.
Oriental dance, gardening, drama. There's just one rule here. The workshop leaders don't know the details of the violence these women have suffered. Their gaze is turned towards the future.
The karate workshop is organized by a charity called Fight for Dignity, and they're here as volunteers. We make sure the women know that this isn't a self-defense class. It's not about learning to fight, it's about teaching them to take back possession of their bodies.
J'entends pas. C'est parti, on reprend. Mais t'aurais pu me toucher là, j'étais déjà content. Ouais, bien. Bah oui, t'as tout perdu. Ok, Yamé. Yamé, ça veut dire stop, d'accord? Je leur demande de se toucher quelque
I ask them to touch their bodies because it's difficult for women who have been subjected to violence to accept someone else touching them.
Quelqu'un les touche. T'es prête? Oui. Par là? Ok. Ok. 1, 2. Yes. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait là? Ramène le pied. Oui, on croise derrière. Et boum. L'autre. Yes, c'est pas grave. L'autre jambe. Oui.
I've dreamed of learning karate all my life. This is the first time that I've had the opportunity to do it. My body feels strong. I can see myself practicing. I feel protected.
On voit des femmes qui, au début,
We see women who, at the start, are shy, introverted, whose shoulders hang down. But during the course of the workshops, they get their confidence back.
Tu peux t'en servir comme des perles, hein? C'est pas un souci.
J'ai pu assister par exemple à l'atelier.
I took part in a workshop on self-esteem where women made jewelry in order to create something for themselves. They had their makeup and hair done too.
La crème que tu peux mettre aussi.
Ah bah oui. Trop bien. Regarde braise, attention, ça rigole pas du tout là. On va pas faire beaucoup plus que ça. Ils vont tous tomber comme des mouches.
Merci bien, c'est gentil, merci.
Merci beaucoup. Ça change. Voilà. Voilà, on va continuer à vivre. Voilà, parfait. Voilà. Ouais, parfait. Il y a une de face. Est-ce que ça vous pose problème que je vous touche? Non. Donc, voilà. Mettez-vous comme ça. Ne bougez pas.
Getting their smiles back, posing for a camera, appreciating their appearances, taking back possession of their bodies. In their eyes, you can see they've changed.
Oui, voilà, pense quelque chose de beau. Oui, voilà. Elle est bonne, elle est petite sur la ligne.
It's a bit strange now because this is my last return trip to Rennes. It's been 5 months now that I've been traveling between Saint-Denis and Rennes to do an internship that I'm passionate about. I'm excited because it's also the start of a new project, the creation of a maison de femmes at the hospital in Rennes. The goal is to replicate the model within the hospital where I work and where I'm a junior doctor in gynecology obstetrics. It's an ambitious project that's proven itself to work, but as a 28-year-old junior doctor, it's not always easy to appear credible, even if we work hard and are ambitious. But I really think it's important not to give up, otherwise projects like this never get off the ground. It's about believing until the very end.
Sometimes words are added to the collages, like feminism kills, or people actually tear them down, men and women. It bothers them to read about the violence that is taking place. But it exists. There's one slogan that sums up what we really want. We don't want to count our dead anymore. It doesn't get any clearer than that. While we continue to get nothing out of the people in government, we'll keep tarnishing your walls. Do something before the whole of Paris is covered in A4 sheets of paper.
During my internship, I found out that I'm pregnant and I'm expecting a little boy. It's made me think, how should I bring up a boy in this patriarchal society? How do I bring him up so that he never becomes an abuser? How should I teach him to be a feminist? How do I offer him a place in society? How do I show him that he can be many things and not necessarily the man that society wants him to be?
Dealing with femicide means stopping the violence spreading between generations. One of the collages says, protect the living, honor the dead. To do this, all complaints made to the police need to be followed up and investigated in the way they deserve to be, so that justice is given to the victims of domestic violence and all victims of gender-based violence.
Pour les victimes de violences conjugales ou toutes les violences faites aux femmes.
The message I would like to give victims is don't hesitate. Make yourself known to the police, to charities. It's important that you're not alone. And I have a message for the perpetrators. Don't think that because you hit your wife at home that we won't come for you, we won't know about it. We'll find out and we'll never let you get away with it.
My dream is that we shall no longer need maison des femmes, that women will no longer be sexual objects, overpowered and manipulated, and will no longer be sold into marriages in which the hymen is the #1 priority. It's a huge project.
And that's the end of this week's report and this edition of Reporters. Thanks for watching and do stay tuned to France 24.